1.2, using a scientific approach. You're caught in the rain. Should you run or walk? Maybe you should run. Less time in the rain means less water falls down on you. Or maybe you should walk. Moving slower causes you to run into fewer drops. This is a question that you can try to answer with a scientific approach. What do you think? Which one should you do? Should you run or should you walk in the rain? Which one will keep you drier? An organized plan for gathering and organizing and communicating information is called a scientific method. You can use a scientific method to search for the answer to a question. Scientific methods can vary from case to case, depending on the question and how the researcher decides to look for an answer. The goal of any scientific method is to solve a problem or to better understand an observed event. To the right, we have an example of a scientific method. Each step uses specific skills. The order of the steps, though, can vary. Sometimes you'll use all the steps and other times only some of them. So the first step is to make an observation and then ask a question. From your question, you would develop a hypothesis. Then you would test your hypothesis with an experiment. As you are testing your hypothesis, you will gather data, and then you will analyze your data to draw a conclusion. Now here's where things can get a little messy. From your conclusion, your hypothesis will either be supported or not supported. So supported means that your hypothesis seems like it was correct. Not supported means that your hypothesis seems like it was incorrect. If your hypothesis is supported, you should test your hypothesis with further experiments to see and make sure that you're getting the same results each time or similar results. If your hypothesis is not supported, though, you would revise your hypothesis, then test your new hypothesis. From there, draw conclusions and determine whether or not your hypothesis is now supported. When your hypothesis is supported many times, then you can develop a theory. Scientific investigations often begin with observations. An observation is information that you gather through your senses. A hypothesis is a proposed answer to a question, and it should be written in an if-then format. So, if such and such, then such and such. If I run, then I will stay drier in the rain, or if I walk, then I will stay drier in the rain. In an experiment, any factor that can change is called a variable. And there are several different types of variables. The manipulated variable causes a change. A lot of times we call this, instead of manipulated, we call this the independent variable. And so it is what you change in your experiment that is going to cause something to happen. The responding variable changes in response to the manipulated. And so a lot of times this is called dependent. So the responding or the dependent variable changes in response to whatever you're testing. And so a lot of times the easiest way to think of it is just what are you measuring in your experiment. And then a controlled experiment is an experiment in which only one variable, the manipulated or the independent variable, is deliberately changed at a time. A conclusion describes how facts apply to the hypothesis. A scientific theory is a well-tested explanation for a set of observations or experimental results. Once a hypothesis has been supported in repeated experiments, scientists can begin to develop a theory. So back to our example. We're talking about if it's raining, should you run or walk? You observe it raining, and that during different times of or different speeds that you travel, you're going to get a varying amounts of staying dry. So the question that you could ask would be, how does speed affect how wet you get in the rain? And someone's hypothesis might be, the faster your speed, the drier you will stay. So if I walk faster or if I run, then I will stay drier. The experiment would be to test whether speed affects how wet you get in the rain. So maybe having someone go out in the rain and run, and then someone else or that same person walk. In 1997, 2 meteorologists conducted a controlled experiment to determine if moving faster keeps you drier in the rain. One scientist walked 100 yards and the other ran the same distance. Variables such as type of clothes were controlled. The clothes of the walking scientist accumulated 217 grams of water. The clothes of the running scientist accumulated 130 grams of water. In this case, the scientists concluded that running in the rain keeps you drier. However, there's an episode of Mythbusters where they test this same idea, and they found that walking in the rain keeps you drier. So that's varying views. So this idea would have to be tested many, many times further to determine which of these options is more viable. After repeated observations or experiments, scientists may arrive at a scientific law. A law is a statement that summarizes a pattern found in nature. So a theory was an explanation of an observed event. A scientific law is just a statement that summarizes a pattern found in nature. For example, Newton's law of gravity is a scientific law that's been verified over and over. Scientists have yet to agree on a theory that explains how gravity works, though. A model in science is a representation of an object or event. A street map is a model of a city. Scientific models make it easier to understand things that might be too difficult to observe directly.